Boom, and we're live. Okay, so this is, I'm pretty sure, episode 13 of the Business, Life, and Brotherhood podcast. And today we've got Luis on the line. And Luis, for those listening and watching at home, we're just going to jump right in. If you want to give like a 45-second bio synopsis, like of who you are and what you're doing now, and then as always, we'll dig in.
Sure. So I joined AKSI over at Eastern Washington University over in Cheney, here in Washington State. Was part of the Edify chapter. There I was responsible for being the webmaster and the VP of membership. So I did a lot of the pledge education as well. And yeah, it was a fun run. It was a little short. I did Running Start when I was 16, so I ended up graduating with my AA a couple of weeks before my high school diploma, and so my stint year at Eastern was 2 years, and there I double majored in human resources and operations management. And right now, I currently work as a senior consultant, focusing on compensation here at Providence St. Joseph Health. And we're one of the largest healthcare networks in the country. We're 100,000 employees, spanning across over 6 states. So it's a really interesting field. You at least back when I was going to college, you couldn't get a degree. And I'm not sure if that's still the case. So you really just kind of have to luck out and just try it out, see where the opportunity is at, and then pretty much once you're in, you're in. So I've been doing that for over 7 years. While I was at Eastern, I had 3 paid internships, and the last one ended up turning into a full-time gig, and so that's how I got my foot in the door in compensation.
Nice. That's awesome, man. So there's no direct degree that you know of that puts people in this position. So you got to kind of work into it. Tell me a little bit about it and about, are you advocating for greater compensation for your employee? What does that mean, you work in compensation? I mean, everybody likes to get paid, right? That's kind of the thing. But I mean, what does your position normally entail, if you can? Because I guess I just don't. It's an HR position.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. A lot of people don't always have an understanding that there's someone who influences what you make. There's someone that does price your job and does actually put a dollar figure to the value that you add to the company. That's my job.
That's crazy. I always thought that they, as a person, you decide, that's why we always tell people, like, learn how to ask for a raise, man. Like, okay, so sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, and I have quite a bit to add to that conception as well. But yeah, it's a lot of math. Some of my primary duties, aside from like pricing jobs, like some of like the traditional focus of compensation, it's really revolving around total rewards. So what that entails is, aside from just base, we also look at short-term incentives, long-term incentive plans. We work for ways to attract, retain, and motivate our employees. That's our ultimate goal. So our compensation, just pay practices, just in general, need to be able to align with that vision. And so what kind of goes in on that is, what are some programs that we can implement to advocate for performance-based compensation? Being in healthcare, it's kind of tricky because we have heavy union involvement, and they get paid a little bit differently than the traditional pay for performance model. Meaning, every single year, you get a certain performance score, just as an example, based on where you lie within the pay range. We're going to spit out a recommendation for what we think we should be giving you. One, to keep up with inflation, but as well to be able to reward you for that performance. as well. And so that's this whole algorithm that we work through developing. And so that's why a lot of that feedback is pretty crucial.
So
The
is that
unions.
like an action? Like I know like guys that work in insurance and they work for, they'll do like an actuarial table to figure out, hey, what's your arm worth, right? So they can insure it properly. Is this kind of like in the same math vein, trying to figure out like, okay, we can afford to pay people in this position kind of this much, and we use these short-term and long-term benefits to draw in the right kind of candidate. It sounds like it's a lot more involved than we need three guys to work over here and we can pay them $22 an hour, like kind of thing, right? It sounds like it's almost like in this, like you could easily transition to like an insurance job where you're like validating the value of body parts.
Yeah, sure,
Like,
yeah.
does that make sense? Does that just because like I am totally blows my mind. I would just think that you pay a guy $15 an hour, $27 an hour, or whatever to do a job. So what I'm asking, does that track? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's actually actuaries and my field have a lot in common. Actuaries are far more sophisticated than I am, but there's a lot of similarities in that aspect. Really, it's just attract, retain, and motivate. We want to be able to attract the best talent possible. We want to be able to motivate them to do a good job while they're in that position. And if it's not in that position, then we want to be able to motivate them um, to continue to do a good job where they can add value in another part of the company and motivate. I mean, if we have really strong talent, why would we want to lose that? Turnover costs are very expensive. Even just enrolling people in benefits and having people leave. I mean, it costs a lot of money. The dollars begin to stack up quite a bit after a while. So we want to be able to do the best that we can um, to kind of satisfy that mission.
Yeah.
In that sense, and compensation is just one aspect, right? I mean, you really have to you still have to enjoy your job. You have to enjoy the people that you work for.
Hope so.
Yeah, you have to be able to drink the Kool-Aid. Really, if people
Yeah.
aren't drinking the Kool-Aid, I mean, it's not
I love
you're
that.
not really doing a whole lot.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's also a brother, and he was saying he got this job a few years back, and he was telling me like he immediately started talking like I love this Kool-Aid, like that's how he explained how much he was into this job, and I was like, all right, makes sense. I wanted to touch on the attract, retain, and motivate. I love that dynamic. Like that's a great tagline to adopt. And one of the things that I think that being in a business fraternity and the way that we talk about like finding jobs and networking and all this stuff. I heard a statistic, and I'll botch the numbers, but it was something like 87% of people get hired because of somebody they know or internally. It's only that those last 3%, 13%, whatever the number was, I can't remember, that when they finally put a job posting out, it's because they couldn't find anybody else in the organization that was a good fit. And what you're saying with, maybe you're not a good fit here, but you're a better fit here, that retention, is that in that vein? Is that kind of what you guys are, part of your job is to move people within the company to better positions? And I mean, does that statistic stack up really? Because if it's something that people need to think about when they're looking for a job, we want to be able to share that with them.
Yeah, kind of. So that's the way that I view my position is really it's a numbers game for me. So when we get to more of a like an intangible uh, situation like that, so where can we best fit some of these people? Where are they most suitable? Where are they going to perform the best? That's something where I would just, again, put on my consulting hat and be able to give guidance to the HR business partners to be able to kind of coach them in a way where they can work directly with their business lines to place their talent wherever they have these vacancies, wherever they have these performance gaps. Um, it's not always like a one size fits all. I mean, there's a lot of experimenting. There's a lot of companies that are really great at slotting people. Really, succession planning is also a real crucial aspect. One of the things that I constantly challenge our businesses is with around you have your talent now. What happens when you don't have that talent? What happens when you have 5 people and now you drop down to 3 people, and the number of patients that are coming through the door is really not going to die down. So what is it that we can do to continue to kind of keep up with this demand, that type of thing? It is a bit stressful, but I mean, they're good questions to be asking. They're good things to be thinking about. And it doesn't even necessarily have to apply, I mean, directly to healthcare, but even just how you're looking at your own business or how you're looking at your own team. What are some things that you can do to be able to get the most out of the talent that you currently have? Maybe that's sending them off to a class. Maybe that's, finding some alternative ways of rewarding people, like giving them like a day off for, an insane amount of work that they did for a particular project. That's not going to be a liability on the bottom line. You just pretend like they didn't show up to the office, that type of thing. Not necessarily that's what we do here, but I mean, there's different ways to be creative and not just having to throw money at people. Because at the end of the day, when you begin to throw money at people, you're just creating a new threshold.
Right.
When talent is dissatisfied, they leave, and that's a new threshold. That's a new bargaining tool that they have in their back pocket.
That's kind of the the Microsoft effect, and the millennial. Everybody's like harps on millennials or whatever. But like, yeah, there's some hardworking people is what I've found. But they got the snacks and the bean bags and the foosball, and that whole thing was like that. You remember the Microsoft started that kind of culture in the '90s, and that's kind of what you're alluding to with the motivate thing. Let's get creative. It's not just about the money. What else is it? And for some people, as much as I try to get away from fraternity stuff when we do these interviews, because it's like, hey, let's talk about real life and what it takes to get to what people are actually doing outside of the the college and stuff. But like, some people are really into charity. Some people are really into service. Some people are really into, and so all those facets come into play, to piggyback off of the chapter experience, right? So, so you've been in this position for 7 years, is that right?
This particular one, around 2 years.
Okay.
I've dabbled quite a bit. So I first got my experience. I did my first 3 years over at Itron, which is this smart grid tech company based out of Liberty Lake, just outside of Spokane. Tough times. Was actually laid off at 22, and my wife and I had always talked about moving to California, and they gave me like a month notice. It was real. I mean, they pretty much my whole team was pretty much gone. It was reduced to like one person, all the way up from me to even some of the higher level folks up there. It just very, very aggressive industry, very competitive. But anyway, so yeah, they gave me like a month notice, and that gave me quite a bit of time to kind of search and figure out what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting this contract position working in Silicon Valley, and I worked for this company called Seagate Technologies. They have quite a bit of market share in their space, and so it was right in the backyard of Apple, which was kind of interesting.
I bet.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I mean, I primarily focused on sales compensation, so a lot of commission-based programs, sales incentive programs, short-term incentive programs, that type of thing. Same thing, a lot of math, a lot of numbers. But my space was primarily total rewards compensation. So what I had listed before, so base and incentive plan design, performance planning, that type of thing. So I ended up leaving that job and picking up another role at Williams-Sonoma, which has a lot of popular brands like Pottery Barn, West Elm, a lot of fun. So I worked in San Francisco, just outside of the financial district there for a little while. That was a real fun job. I really enjoyed my
And you
time.
were you were in your young 20s then, like 22, 23, or how
Yeah,
long? Yeah.
um, yeah, 20. That was like 22 through 25
Okay, yeah.
or so.
That's killer.
And then we moved out here in 2016.
Where's out
Um,
here?
Here, well, that was a thing. We were actually divided between settling in Colorado or Washington State. So we came up to Washington State for, I'd applied to jobs in both states, but we came up. It was around the time so we quit our jobs and
Hmm.
said, you know what, we're going to go back, and next phase of our life, we're going to focus on settling in an area where we can buy a house. And so we went over, I think this was around like Christmas or something like that. So the idea was we would have like just a really like long hiatus, like maybe like, 6, 8 weeks not working and just enjoying our time and figure out where we wanted to settle. I ended up getting a job offer like my second week. I was in the state, and so that's Providence. So I'm here now. I'm very happy. It's a great job, and we bought a house in 2016.
Perfect. What
Yeah,
town are you in then?
I'm in Puyallup.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's down south.
killer.
Yeah.
Um, that's awesome, man. And so that's kind of funny. Like, oh, we're gonna take all this time off, and then this job. I mean, wouldn't you know,
Yeah.
right? It's always, but that's good. That's good. Um,
Mhm.
and so, would you, I have a follow up question about the kind of work that you do because it sounds like
Mhm.
you're balanced between heavy spreadsheet analytic
Mhm.
type stuff
Yeah.
and consulting with the people in HR to give people direction. Is it a balance of that, or are you mostly spreadsheets, or are you mostly people? Like, I'm trying to give folks, a picture of how you interact. Like, if somebody, because chances are nobody's heard of this as a thing, and there might
Yeah.
be somebody out here there who's wicked good with spreadsheets and loves that kind of analytic stuff, but also, see some value in the working with people and making sure and they're getting the best out of their jobs. And so it's a weird mix. And so
Mhm.
how do you position that, or what's the juxtaposition of your day like, I guess?
Sure. Oh, well, a lot of my job, I would say maybe like 20% is, some day-to-day stuff, pricing jobs here and there. Maybe if you want like an equity review, that type of thing, I'll take a look at what the market is telling me. I'll be able to, communicate a recommendation, and we can kind of, we would just have sort of like a jam session, figure out where the priorities align, that type of thing, and how do we move forward. A bigger part of my job is like the consulting factor. So supporting acute care, I support a lot of the labor negotiations. So I do a lot of work and providing recommendations for contractual wages, premiums, that
Yeah.
type of thing,
So
forecasting.
it really is a heavy mix of let's comp out and figure out kind of what this value of this job position
Mhm.
is, and then let's get heavy into recommendations and coming up with a strategic plan around there. So you're not like passing the buck off to somebody, you're actually
No.
kind of seeing them all the way through.
Yeah, I do all the analysis and I communicate it. I take all the numbers, everything the market is telling me, where we're currently positioned, and I try to tell the best story that I can. Really,
That's
I mean
awesome.
that's pretty much it. It's definitely stressful. It's a heavy load for sure.
Yeah. And
It's
it
pretty
strangely
rewarding.
has a sales component where you're like putting together a story and trying to sell somebody on this idea, right?
Yeah, kind of.
That's what I heard. Um, let's jump back a minute because you said that you went through Running Start or Jump Start or whatever that, I can't, they've changed the
Mhm.
name on that program, but then you went
Yeah.
to college fairly young, it sounds like, and graduated and got in the mix. I mean, you're down in California, 22,
Mhm.
25. Were you able in the fraternity to be a part of any of the e-board or committees or any of the goings on in that, or were you pretty much just getting through your schoolwork and showing up to events? Like what was the mix for you as far as leadership involvement there?
Really that. I mean, I was heavy in recruiting
Mm,
people. They weren't large numbers. I think like my best quarter was like I think 5 or 6 people.
that's still
Um,
pretty good.
Most of the time it was, two, maybe three. Just kind of rallying a lot of those guys and getting them through the process. Helping them to make connections. I put on quite a bit of like educational seminars. One famous one that I had was around, how to prepare for an interview. So
Yes.
I would have like 30 different questions, and I would kind of structure it to like how you should set it up and how you should best answer some of these questions. All the way down to how are you dressed, your body language,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
How interesting that was kind of a passion of yours, and then you've meandered. I mean, you were an HR major, but I mean, into a position that's setting people up for success. I mean, there's some parallels there, right? I can't. I'm not blind to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, the people are very, very aware of the things that are happening around them. They're aware of the interactions that they have with other people. They're aware of their environment in general. So why not bring that into like every aspect that you do? So like
Yeah.
with mine, even though it's primarily numbers based, yeah, I enjoy the fact that there's not a ton of emotion there, but at the same time, I'm able to kind of have people step back for a second, evaluate what we have in front of each other, and kind of find the best course of action, while at the same time educating them, lifting them up, giving them confidence to be able to explain this to somebody else. And that's really how you begin to create value added relationships, I think. And
Yeah.
so, with some of these seminars that I would have, I think I was able to do that. I gave people confidence, and they're ready, to interview for internships or their first job, even if it's just a retail job while they're while they're in school. You
Yeah.
know,
I think those things make a huge difference when people go, especially put the effort into putting together an event, but then when people can actually show up and draw real value, from it, that's
Mhm.
that's tremendous. So, well, that's awesome, man. With your position, it sounds like you're up to your elbows, kind of, and loving it, not in a bad way, but like that you're all about kind of how this teases out. Do you have any big goals or different avenues that you're thinking about pursuing, or anything in your off time, goal wise, or that you're pursuing or doing something different? I mean, you can't spend all your time at work, even though it probably does take up a lot of your time. But tell me a little bit about that, and kind of what goals or anything you have set for the future.
Sure. I mean, a lot of the goals that I have are not really based on my current uh,
Yeah.
my career. Really, I really just I use what I do as a tool to be able to leverage goals that I have, goals that I want to be able to accomplish later on. And I can talk more about that. Outside of work, I do powerlifting.
Oh
So
wow.
I train primarily at home. I have a garage gym and just slowly began to add equipment. But with the limited like cable machines, limited space, you can't really have like these bodybuilding type workouts like you would at a commercial gym. So my hobby of creating a garage gym just slowly evolved into powerlifting, which is something that I'm able to do at home with the equipment
That's
that I
awesome.
have. So now I'm pretty confident. I have like a pretty solid full blown gym. And I'm competing in 3 weeks in Spokane.
That's rad.
Yeah, pretty excited about that. My
Is
wife
this?
is also doing it as well.
Oh my gosh, that's killer. Is
Yeah.
this your guys' first competition?
Yeah, this will be our first one. And
Oh man.
we've been powerlifting for over a year now.
Yeah.
And so now we're just at the point where we're comfortable and like, okay, let's give us a shot and see where it goes.
So what do you do? I mean, obviously, there's form and function and everything like that, but
Mhm.
how do you, if this is your first competition, are you just trying to beat yourself every time and
Mhm.
maintain
Yeah.
like how do you train for something like that? Or how do you know that you're progressive? If you're doing it at home, you're not in a gym, you don't have somebody coaching you. Um,
Yeah.
how do you do
Yeah.
that?
So I've had a couple of coaches now.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
Okay.
so my the first guy I worked with, Brandon Allen, was based out of Las Vegas, and he did a lot of my programming, and really helped build the foundation that I have now. It was great. A lot of good, useful information. It transitioned over to, I decided that, okay, you know what, I'm going to compete. So I got involved with a group based out of Portland, Oregon. The team is called Team Phoenix Performance. Um, and they train out of a gym called Strength Union, which is it's not in Portland technically. It's like Happy something.
Happy
Um,
Valley, is that a
yeah, I
thing?
think Happy Valley.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and it's like this rural like warehouse gym. It's pretty neat though. Great group of people. So and now Kylie Klitzing, she does mine and my wife's programming. So she essentially preps us for our meet. So we build as much strength as we possibly can leading up to the meet. That would be our peak. So by the time we're ready to compete, that should be our very strongest point in our training. And then from there, we begin to kind of like dive down, right? So
Mm.
like deload. So deload the first week, peak, and then begin to like slow things down. And she also does my nutrition as well because we still have to be. Nutrition is probably, honestly, I think more important than the actual training itself. It's a lot of eating. I train about 5 times a week, eat about 5 to 6 times a day. So I'm just constantly just doing
Wow.
something. So I'm
Do you know
always
what your
thinking about it.
do you know what your calorie load is?
Right now I'm sitting at about 1950 or around
A
that
day?
range. Yeah.
1950 a day? Okay.
Uh,
That seems like not enough calories. Like that you
it,
always read on the package of based on a 2000 calorie diet, right? That's what the
yeah.
that's what the package tells me I'm supposed to eat.
It's interesting too because so she does our focus is macro based
Hmm.
nutrition, right? So carbs, proteins, fats. When you look at that packet of that 2,000 calories per day, they don't even consider protein.
Really?
Go back and look at the national recommendation for that 2,000 calorie macronutritional breakdown. Protein is non-existent. The reason for that is because there's not as much profitability with protein. The people who have that influence are the people that are dishing out these cereals,
Hmm.
these non-perishable foods that they want to just jam down your throat,
Yeah, yeah.
full of
Food
sugars.
products, not food.
Mhm.
Food products. It's made in a
Exactly,
factory, right? It's like
exactly.
I always joke with people about food, right? Because all food comes from a plant. One's a
Hmm.
manufacturing plant, and the other one's like a plant in the ground. Like
Yeah,
that's the difference. That's awesome. I didn't
yeah,
know that they don't even count protein. That blows my
hmm
mind.
yeah. It's pretty crazy. And I think it's actually adjusted now. I believe it's 2,000 to now they have a range.
Oh my gosh.
2,000 to 2,500. I can't remember. It's something like that. Yeah, it's constantly being updated now. But
Yeah.
obviously, again, my nutrition is heavily protein based. I'm at 220 protein, about 170 carbs, and 50 grams of fat, like around
Wow.
that range. And so days that I don't train, I drop my carbs in the evening. So that works out to about 100 grams of carbs a day, but fats and proteins stay consistent. So it's real interesting. And the whole point of that is really just to be able to maintain and or build strength. Um, it's possible there could be a fluctuation of weight, not likely. What
Right.
instead would happen is that fat will begin to be replaced with muscle. So really the body weight itself won't really drop a whole lot or fluctuate a whole lot. So that's the whole point. Because going into a meet, you really don't want to be cutting. Um, I was going into it with that type of mentality and realizing like the first 2 weeks, like this is not going to work. This is like my recovery is taking way too long. I'm taking too long between sets. Fatigue sets in. You don't want to train. There's all these like different psychological components to it as well. So it's a real interesting balance, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Have you always been competitive? I mean, this is a real competitive kind of thing to get into. Have you always sports and that sort of stuff, or is this kind of a new thing that you're coming through to in your late 20s? Late 20s? How old are you now?
I'm 27.
Okay, that counts. All right, late
Yeah,
20s.
I just
Mid.
turned
You could say mid, I guess.
late 20s.
We'll save late for like 29. That's when that counts. But have you always been competitive? Did you do a lot of sports?
I did a lot of individual sports. Just like how this is, wrestling, taekwondo, that
Yeah.
type of thing. Not so much team sports. I mean, just some basketball when I was a kid, that type of
Yeah.
thing. But I really do like being able to go in and defeat myself, which I'm able to do that with this sport. So even though this particular sport is pretty competitive, even with this mindset that I have, I know that I'm never going to be the strongest person, even in the state for that matter. So that's not really like the way I have to look at it. It's really just what can I do to be the best possible version of myself, set goals for
Yeah.
myself that are attainable, and what are the measures that I can take on myself to be able to accomplish those goals, which I love, and it's something that I can apply in and out of the weight room.
That's awesome. Yeah, 100%. I dig that too. I was never really team sports guy. It's fun to play, but you know, uh,
Yeah.
well, cool, man. I just have a handful of questions to touch back
Yeah.
on a couple of things. One of the things I always like to ask people, especially like it seems like a lot of the people that I interview, they have that, or talk with, they have that kind of competitive, beat myself, do daily improvement, set goals, these kinds of things. Um, do you have, are you using any technology or any apps to try to like make your life easier or chase after goals or you know, well, yeah, that's it. Like to make your life easier or chase after goals and get things done. Are you like hot about any new apps or anything?
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of well. Yeah, I have a few
Yeah.
that I use quite a bit. My favorite app, though, it's kind of dumb, but I think what's really important is how accessible it is for you.
Okay.
Is the calculator. I use the calculator all the time. You want that. You want that right at the touch of your fingertips.
Were you told in
Yeah,
school, elementary school, that you have to learn how to do this? You're never going to carry around a calculator? Because I remember hearing that.
I do remember.
Good idiot.
Yeah, don't waste so much precious brain power in trying to give yourself a confidence boost like, oh, I can add it up myself. No, I mean just take a couple extra seconds and see where you're at. I use it in the gym constantly because I need to know what I'm
Really?
based on my training. What did I do last week? How much more do I want to go up this week? That type of thing. So I have to sit there and just add up everything because I'm focused on training. I'm not going to do math right now.
Yeah.
You know.
That
So
cracks
yeah,
me up.
so
That's the best.
that's the best app you can have, really. No, but some other stuff. Wonderlist. I love Wonderlist.
Hmm.
It's a great task list, and you can have collaborative lists. So my wife and I have collaborative lists like Costco. What do we need at Costco? What do we need at Target? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Some projects need to get done around the house. She can add it. I can add it. Um, even just use it for myself, like short-term goals, long-term goals. You can always go back and reflect on it. Places that I want to travel to, just add it as I come inspired. Like I'm going to travel there at some point. We need to take some time off. What are some places we can go to, and what makes the most sense? I can always just refer to that, which is great.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I definitely love that. That one.
What about books, podcasts, people you're taking advice from, or mentors? Are you listening to anybody right now, or is there anything that's kind of that you're? Well, I guess that's it. Books, podcasts, mentors, people you're taking advice from. Are you hot on any of that, or?
Books. Definitely the number one book I recommend is the Total Money Makeover, Dave Ramsey.
Really?
That's a great book. Definitely drank that Kool-Aid. Has been hugely impactful on my life.
Have you ever read David Bach?
No, I've not.
He's got the start late, finish rich, smart couples finish rich. It's kind of a Ramsey kind of vibe. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I'll have to check that out. No, I mean, yeah, that book is real great. Definitely good, especially if you're honestly. I mean, I think everybody should probably read that book at least once. I'm not going to finish the name of it, but you might have heard of it: The Subtle Art of Not Giving a. Control the rest.
Yeah. I'll put a link I'm going to link up all this stuff in so that's cool.
And that's by Mark Manson. That's a great book. Especially for a lot of those people that are dealing with anxiety and really just like building up problems that are not really even problems. You've just made them a problem because you wanted to make it a problem.
Yeah.
People who are afraid of dealing with confrontation. It's really not that big of a deal. Anyway, that's a great book.
Are you doing these on Audible, or you actually read?
The Dave Ramsey. Okay, there's some I can kind of send you which ones are really great for audiobook. Yeah, Audible is a great app, and then which ones I would probably read. So Dave Ramsey, he narrates that one. I would definitely get the audio version of that one. And then Mark Manson's book, the one that I just referenced, I would probably read that one. That's a great one. That's a great one just to have. Just have it on your desk, or you're gonna see that title. Yeah. That's great to have.
That's awesome.
The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. A great book. My wife is she's my whole world. She's my number one supporter. She's my best friend. I want to do everything that I can to invest in that. I think that book is really helpful. I kind of found that book kind of late in the game. I'd heard about it, people had told me about it, but I never like got around to it. And I wish I had. Not that like our marriage is bad or anything like that, but it just really just opened my eyes, and it opened her eyes to like, oh, all these different things that we don't do. Like it all just kind of makes sense. It's just our languages. It's just our personality traits. How do we communicate? What's the best route of communication for each other? It's real interesting.
That's awesome. I've heard that book get kicked around a little bit too. I haven't looked into it. Did you just get a text message? Your phone just like jumped.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, it just kind of like slid a bit. Huh?
I was like, "Whoa, what was that? It was freaky." Well, that's awesome, man. Any podcasts or anything like that, or mostly just books? I know it's kind of like a broad question, but I always like to ask because 2 things: it gives me like, oh, cool, like different apps to look into or different books to look into, and everything you mentioned is different than what I've read. And then podcasts, I'm in the car a lot, so like I always do audiobooks and podcasts and that sort of stuff. And then other people too, obviously. It's not completely selfish, but mostly whoever hears this would be like, oh, I should listen to that.
Sure. Yeah, no, Gary Vaynerchuk is great. All his books, get him on audiobook. Great. His voice it's really impactful. He has a real good way of really just adding that extra punch to those words versus just reading it. That's always nice. Yeah, so he's definitely very influential. very motivating. Dave Ramsey, I listen to Dave Ramsey quite a bit. Again, I've drank that Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
We're in the process of paying down all of our debt at our house right now. We'll accomplish that goal probably in January. So we're
Killer.
very excited about that. And it keeps you motivated. So if you're down that path, paying off your debt, it's really nice to be able to kind of have that constantly reinforced. A lot of people ask some great questions. He's got some pretty solid advice. I would take everything with a grain of salt. I'm not saying like just follow him blindly. You know, obviously think about it. How does it reflect on your own life? That type of thing. How can you apply it? Don't just take.
Right.
Don't just eat the cake. Let's see. Yeah, I mean those are probably the biggest ones. Oh, Joe Rogan podcast, guilty pleasure of mine. I love his podcast. Some of the people that he brings on are very interesting. I don't listen to every single one or watch every single one for that matter, but he's got some. It's very entertaining. Some of them are pretty value added. Some is just. It's nice just to step back and not have to think a whole lot and just kind of hear these like conversations just happen organically. It's like him and Tom Segura and Joey Diaz are a riot. I love listening to those guys. Very, very funny group of guys.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty much it for the most part. Always looking for new stuff though.
Yeah, I do. I go on and off of Gary Vee, but I've never listened to Rogan's podcast. And a couple of people have mentioned to me because he's big into like training and MMA and stuff like that, which is a whole different kind of world that super interesting to me, but I haven't delved in yet. What about like, because we talked about you have early success, right? You had early like college, like made that happen. It sounds like you got into some great internships that were paid. That's a blessing. Not a lot of people have that kind of opportunity. Had good luck, finding work down in California, and so there's obviously like you start making some like. Because what I hear you say, I'm seeing all these tally marks. You got a lot of wins under your belt here, and so it might feel, it's your life, so you might feel like it's normal, but for other people, like that's awesome, man. So, like, what do you think like sets people apart who, because we all have friends who maybe they're not doing as well as we think they can do, or they're vocalizing frustrations and stuff like that. What do you think sets people apart who are let's call it winning, and being able to accomplish those goals and check those boxes versus those who just aren't? I mean, do you think that there's something different? What do you think the difference is?
I think that people are primarily addicted to, I'd say, two things. They probably overlap for the most part, but one of them would be kind of chasing instant gratification.
Yeah.
And stagnancy. They're
addicted to stagnancy. Okay, tell me more about that.
So that's what's evolved. That's the new laziness, I would say, and a lot of people do it. I'm guilty of doing it. But really, aside from if you just put the gratification aside, stagnancy would be just being complacent and being accepting of the things that you don't like in your life, and you're unwilling to change them. You're unwilling to get uncomfortable. That's part of our human nature. We want things as easily as possible. So again, that's where we kind of have the instant gratification come into play. So kind of like the way I like to look at it too is like with like powerlifting, for example. No one is going to lift that weight for me. I'm either going to clear it or I'm going to drop it. Right.
Yep.
If I drop it, that's because I haven't made the changes in my routine, in my life, to be able to get on a path, to be able to accomplish that goal. I'm doing the same thing every single day. That's why you're not breaking that PR.
Right.
You're doing the same thing every single day. You're not changing anything. You're not happy with your job? Leave. Seriously, leave. You want to make more money? Leave.
Yeah.
You don't owe anyone anything. Seriously, you don't.
Who is that
There's
guy?
no. It's
No, I 100% agree. You just reminded me so much of this guy that, and I'm gonna have to shoot you a message later once I find him, because I was like, man, you guys are peas in a pod, man. No, it's the complacency, the mediocrity, right? You get, okay, well, I'm comfortable. This is easy. It's, you know, there's like all kinds of quotes come to mind, like, you know, good is the enemy of great, right? Michael Jordan had a quote about how, like, and I'll botch this because I botch all the quotes. Something about, like, you know, failure is okay. It's having not tried, right? That's the problem. Is like you didn't even try, you know. So, no, I dig it, man. That's, yeah. I think that there's something to be said for that too, especially, like, you know, pushing yourself and doing what you're doing and challenging yourself every day. It seems to be a theme with people that I talk to who are getting a lot of check boxes, who are getting, you know, tallying up those successes. It's because they're out there doing it. They're out there trying.
Now, a lot of people, they create these mental barriers when really just look at your life now, look at your situation now. What are some things that you can do to leverage the quality of life that you want to have 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 25 years from now? You know, what's interesting is that I think a lot of people are really just stuck in the now.
Yep.
And they don't have this realization that you're going to get old. You're going to be an outdated old piece of technology like a VCR. What makes you relevant enough to be kept around?
Yeah.
Staying a VCR? That's probably a bad analogy, right? Technology itself can't physically change.
Like, people are going to watch this, they're going to be like, what's a VCR?
Probably. No, but it's changed. It's evolved, adapt, whatever. I mean, however you want to look at it. But
yeah.
If you're not happy, I mean, why are you gonna continue to do the same thing? You know, I have to have other things that kind of keep me going, right? I can't just keep doing the same thing. So I use this job as a tool. I'm gonna use that tool to I'm gonna get out of debt. I'm gonna stack a lot of cash, and when opportunities arise, I'm going to take that cash and I'm gonna invest it in these areas where I can create passive income, so that I can spend less time at this job and do more of the things that I want to focus on.
Yeah, I'm all, you got me all kinds of, like, you're speaking a language that, like, I'm breaking a sweat. I'm so excited. Like, no, I'm serious, like, goals and like, we should do another one where we just talk about, you know, passive investment, debt. I mean, I'm almost to the point where I finally got student loans paid off. Like,
Yeah.
I dig it. This is like the perfect segue. You know, one of my last questions really is, you know, the goal setting idea, and this. The question is this: if the person that you are now, were able to travel back in time, right, to some kind of point of your younger self's life where you would have the most impact, right? Whether that's coming out of middle school into high school, something in the high school years before you were getting your AA, or transferring into college. Like, at some point, you know, if you were able to travel back and give yourself two pieces of actionable, tangible, like real world, like, hey, you need to do these two things so that you can propel yourself into the future better, faster, stronger, you know, and hit your goals faster. What would those two pieces of advice be?
Man, it's, just two. That's kind of tough.
Yeah, just two. We got to have them. We got to do two things. Oh, it's my favorite question, man.
Well, if it's two things, I want to cover, you know, both of these aspects. But really a lot of it is just going to be falling around, what are you doing for yourself, and really how do you want to be thinking and approaching things in the future. So I think like the number one thing, aside from, even now what you do for a living, how you make your money, what you do for yourself outside of that is equally as important as what you do inside of it. So uh, be consistent with eating right and staying healthy, being physically active.
Mm.
Don't eat for purpose. Don't reward yourself with food, and be sure that you're being active, and just be active in any way that you feel is appropriate for you. If you want to run. If you want to lift weights, lift weights. If you want to box. But do something. Get out there. Be open. It does so much more for you, physically as it does mentally. You're dealing with anxiety, depression, any of those things. Seriously, get your ass up and get to work. Go work your ass off. Go sweat it out. Go challenge yourself. Go defeat yourself. Get to the point where you're crawling out of that gym. Get to the point where you're slouching back in pain and agony from the basketball court. Like, do
Yeah.
something. Defeat yourself. And I think the other side of it is the other kind of piece of advice that I would say is really just, I think kind of ties in a little bit more to like Mark Manson's book, but uh, care about things that are worth caring about. Don't give so much weight. Don't give so much time and energy to the things that aren't going to matter a year from now. You're dealing with something stressful, something that's just out heavy on your mind, I guess. Ask yourself, is this going to matter a year from now? Most of the time, it's not going to
Mm.
matter a year from now. So
That's
why are you
good.
going to be spending all this time and energy on this cancer that's just festering in your mind, that's just tearing you down, weighing you down? There's no value there. Focus on the things that you can control. You can control your attitude. You can control your approach. You can control the measures that you choose to take.
You see me, I'm jotting all kinds of stuff down. Like, not dig it, man. No, I love that. Is this gonna matter a year from now? That's heavy. Like, that's
Yeah.
a good thing to, I like that reflective position a lot.
My
Uh,
wife asks me that all the time. She knows my triggers. Is this
well,
gonna
that's
matter a year
good.
from now?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good team. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Um, that's killer. So here's what I like when you get rolled, like you got some passion in you, my friend. Like I can hear it. You start leaning in. I'm I'm fired up. Um, that's the best. So, is there anything that I super appreciate you being so generous with your time and jumping on with me, especially short notice. Um, like I love doing these. I think it's the best opportunity selfishly, I get to meet awesome people and we're all connected, which I think is fantastic, but we get to share those stories with other people too. Is there anything I never know what people expect when they come on, but is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to be sure to touch on? Anything that we missed or you thought I was going to ask you?
Um. Well, I think I wanted to kind of touch on the instant gratification,
Yeah.
because again, I think that's super important. And a lot of it will really, I mean, it really is an addiction. It's something that we're just completely indulged by, and a lot of it is because we're surrounded by advertisements. We're surrounded by keeping up with the Joneses. We're surrounded by social media.
Yeah.
All these things that completely begin to overwhelm us. They influence our thinking. They manipulate the way that we act, the way we treat each other, the way we treat ourselves. And I think a big piece of advice that I could really give anyone is quit trying to get stuff and fill these voids in your life. feel these inadequacies in your life. We buy things thinking that it's going to satisfy us, and that's far from reality. Do live on less than you make. Don't reward yourself with stuff. Don't reward yourself with food. People do that all the time. It's like what we eat now. It's like we're eating like we celebrated an acquisition or something like that. It's
Every
we
day
can't
of the
be
week.
eating like, yeah. It's like you're gonna feel like crap. You're gonna get groggy. You're not gonna want to work out. You're not gonna want to do all these things. It's interesting that something as little as what you put into your body has so much impact and so much influence in how you're going to perform in the now, and it's going to affect where you're going to be at in the quality of your life in the future. It's so impactful.
Yeah.
So it's really just like get away from instant gratifications. Even if it's like stuff, if there's stuff that you want, plan it. What is it? This is the book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
Find a way to pay for it. Plan it. Like create some additional income. Save for it. Buy the thing that you want at that point. That's the real gratification. You earned it at that point. Oh, I graduated college. I'm gonna reward myself. I'm gonna buy myself a brand new car. It's like that's like the dumbest thing that you can do. You're gonna go buy a depreciating asset. You're gonna pay interest on it because you earned it. In your mind, you haven't done anything yet. You have not done anything yet. You haven't even dipped your feet in the water. Why are you going to go do all these like detrimental things? You're going to be miserable. You're going to be stacked with all these like payments, and it's just now on top of that, you're not eating right. It's stressful. It's difficult. It's difficult to be successful under those circumstances. We're all guilty of it. I did it.
Yeah.
I like crap. I got into some debt. I did all these things, but they're good reminders to have. We're all human. Practice that self-discipline. You're gonna thank yourself in the long run.
It's liberating too. Like,
Yeah.
especially cutting yourself off. I think it was I can see the cover of the book, and it was a Navy. I want to say a Navy SEAL had written the book. And they talked about how discipline and is the way to freedom, right? So because
Jocko.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Man, that book was killer.
Good content. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you jumping on the line. I think that we'll probably have to do something again in the next little while, like host a symposium or something
Sure.
get in front of some people and have because yeah, like I said, you're speaking a language that that I'm definitely into as well, and I think that a lot of people could benefit from hearing, real world experience, not Instagram life experience, but real world. Here we go. But for those folks that are listening and watching at home, if they picked up on something, they want to reach out and say hello, what's the best way for them to make contact with you? And if they've got questions or maybe you're speaking to them too. Is there a good place for them to find you?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's just either you can add me on LinkedIn. Speaking of Instagram, I'm pretty active on Instagram. So I have a private account, and then I have my training account. So I log in all of my training there as well.
Oh, cool.
I also kind of use it as a training log as well, so I can see what where I was a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, that type of thing. So I can send you those handles. But yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm constantly on Facebook. I use Facebook Messenger a lot. In fact, that's how you and I connected. So
yeah, it's the new normal. Yeah,
yeah.
Facebook Messenger is like, sorry, email, it's over. Like we're on Facebook Messenger now. Yeah. Well, sweet, man. I super appreciate it. We'll link all those things up, and then so that people can reach out to you. But like I said, super grateful to connect, and I hope people got a lot of value from it. And I just can't thank you enough for your time.
All right. Yeah. Great, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.